Everyone is convinced that my wife Liu Ruyan tragically perished in a catastrophic car accident, but only I know the truth. The one who actually died was her older sister Liu Shu. She staged this death as a golden opportunity to vanish. Also, she could elope with her so-called first love Siguan. I've decided to play along and act completely oblivious. I've already moved to officially cancel her identity and residency, and naturally, in my capacity as her legal spouse, I've seized control of all her company shares and executive duties. Within record time, I've purged every bit of opposition. In my previous life, I exposed this twisted masquerade right then and there. But she, without a shred of remorse, simply leaned into Zhang Jiheng's arms. My dear sister is gone. I know the grief is overwhelming, but look closely at me. I am Liu Shu. Under the relentless gaslighting of her entire family, I was branded as a delusional, obsessive son-in-law stalking his sister-in-law before being framed and tossed into a mental asylum to rot. I opened my eyes again and found myself back at the exact moment the identity swap was complete. The air in the funeral parlor was frozen and stagnant. My wife Liu Ruyan stood nearby with her eyes downcast, her fingers slightly trembling and clenched. Her voice was a soft raspy whisper, "Brother-in-law, you must stay strong." My sister, it happened so suddenly. The body lying on the gurney was indeed Liu Shu. Yet everyone else in the room believed it was my wife Liu Ruyan who had perished in that wreck. I stared intensely at her neck, at that faint brown birthmark half hidden by her collar. In my past life, that one tiny detail was what dragged me down to hell. The moment I dared to question her, she cowered in terror behind Zhang Jiheng. Tears streamed down her face as she sobbed, "Zefeng, please snap out of it. Shu is already dead. I am your wife, Liu Ruyan, Zhang Jiheng, her precious first love and savior." My dear brother-in-law pinned me violently against the wall. He cursed me out, calling me a delusional lunatic, lusting after my own sister-in-law. Our 4-year-old daughter, Xiao Yi, innocently reached out to tug on her hem, only to be shoved aside like she was some filthy piece of trash, followed by a frigid, "How uneducated." The very next day, Xiao Yi and I were branded as mentally unstable under the pretense of needing isolated treatment and were forcibly evicted from the Liu family mansion. During that final bitter winter, Xiao Yi was huddled in my arms so starved she lacked the strength to even cry. She whispered, "Daddy, it's cold," and never woke up again. The chill surged up from the soles of my feet, yet I slowly exhaled a single, shuddering breath, forcing the surging crimson rage in my eyes back into a mask of exhausted ashen gray. "You're right. It was far too sudden." I spoke, my voice as coarse and gritty as sandpaper. I turned toward the nearby staff, sounding grief-stricken. "Follow protocol and cremate her immediately. Let my wife depart this world with dignity." Liu Ruyan's head snapped up instantly, her voice laced with urgency. "Yes, we must let my sister rest in peace. I'll handle the remaining arrangements." I stood solitary under the sickly pale lights, staring at the strange corpse upon the gurney. My wife is currently using her sister's identity to chase her dream future by Zhang Jiheng's side. I slowly reached out my hand. But in the end, I only took the corner of the white sheet and gently pulled it back into place, covering that cold, lifeless face. "Liu Ruyan is now legally deceased. And as for you, my dearest, you shall play the role of Liu Shu perfectly from now on. I will personally clear every single obstacle from your path to ensure you walk this stolen road of yours with absolute stability." At the small family gathering following the memorial, the atmosphere was suffocating. Zhang Jiheng sat in the head seat like he owned the place, with Liu Ruyan leaning intimately against his side. She poured a cup of tea for me, her posture elegant, yet her tone was filled with calculated probing. Brother-in-law Ruyan left us so abruptly, some matters weren't properly settled. That company she registered in her name before the wedding, Yingsan Culture. I recall it was performing quite exceptionally. She paused for a beat, acting as if the words were difficult to say. As her only surviving elder sister, perhaps I should step in and manage it for a while. After all, that company was her life's work. Zhang Jiheng gently patted the back of her hand, yet his predatory gaze remained fixed on my face. I held my teacup, freezing my hand in midair, and looked up with eyes that were still bloodshot and raw. My voice was a ragged, hollow rasp. "Yingsan Culture, oh, that company." I set the cup down slowly, rubbing my brow with my thumb in a daze of exhaustion, acting completely worn out and defeated. That firm went under 3 years ago due to gross mismanagement. It was drowned in debt and quietly liquidated. It's been a worthless, bankrupt shell for years. The facade of concern on Liu Ruyan's face instantly froze. "Liquidated? That's impossible." She was bragging to me about new projects just last year, bragging about how she was robbing Peter to pay Paul, or how she was burning her private savings to fill that bottomless pit. I cut her off sharply, my volume rising, with the agitated energy of a man whose nerves are frayed. She only did it to protect her pathetic sense of pride. She didn't want you or Zhang Zheheng to think she was a failure once she left the Liu family and this marriage behind. I watched the expressions on their faces shift into a colorful display of shock and disbelief. Deep down, my heart was pure ice. Since she's already gone? I never intended to bring up these humiliating scandals. I hung my head low, letting my shoulders slump in defeat, and lowered my voice to a whisper. filled with endless fatigue. Sister. Brother-in-law, Ruyan is gone. Xiao Yi and I have absolutely nothing left to lean on. If you still have a shred of family sentiment left, and could just look out for little Xiao Yi a bit, I would be eternally grateful. As for her assets, they're truly gone. She squandered every last cent herself. With those words, I positioned myself and Xiao Yi as the absolute underdogs, and the ultimate victims in this tragedy. The various extended family members present all began to shake their heads and sigh in pity, turning their gazes toward Liu Ruyan and Zhang Jiheng with looks of clear disapproval. At a time like this, they were actually trying to swindle a grieving widower and orphan. Their greed was starting to look absolutely repulsive. Liu Ruyan's face flushed between shades of crimson and deathly pale, her meticulously crafted mask of grief nearly shattering to pieces. She could only force out a sharp, strained sentence. I had no idea things were that bad. Zhang Jiheng shot me a dark, sinister look before pulling Liu Ruyan closer by the shoulders, his tone softening with fake warmth. Enough. Shu, don't upset yourself any further. We'll naturally look after Zifeng and Xiaoyi. We can discuss these technicalities later. I sneered inwardly at their blatant hypocrisy, but on the surface I merely gave a weary nod and fell completely silent, playing the role of the broken widower to perfection. Back at the villa where we were temporarily staying, little Xiaoyi nuzzled her tiny head into the crook of my neck, mumbling a hazy, heartbreaking question. Daddy, did mommy decide she doesn't want me anymore? You just saw wrong, sweetheart. I pressed my cheek against her soft, fine hair. Mommy has turned into a star in the sky. That lady today was your auntie. They just happened to look exactly alike. That very afternoon, armed with a complete set of legal documents, I personally visited several government offices. Liu Ruyan's residency status was officially revoked, and her death was formally registered into the system. Every legal trace of her existence in this world was being permanently erased line by line, entry by entry. Next, I contacted the Liu Group's legal team and executive office, my voice somber yet crystal clear. This is Li Zifeng. My wife Liu Ruyan has passed away in a tragic accident. Per her will and my status as sole legal guardian, I am immediately exercising proxy over all her shares and interest. Prepare the necessary paperwork. I am taking full control of her position and decision-making power. The transfer orders were finalized at lightning speed. At the same time, the massive payout from Liu Ruyan's accidental death insurance was routed according to my strict instructions, directly into a newly established trust fund for Xiaoyi, governed by the most rigorous guardianship protocols. Any withdrawal would now require multiple complex layers of approval. Upon returning to the Liu family ancestral home, my mother-in-law, Liu Mingqi's shrill piercing voice, stabbed through the air like an icicle. That useless little brat. Just looking at that money-grubbing girl makes me... She's exactly like her useless father. Nothing but a goddamn burden. I froze in my tracks. Looking up toward the center of the living room, I saw Xiaoyi standing isolated on the thick carpet, a shattered porcelain teacup lying at her feet. A dark brown tea stain was slowly blooming across her pale little socks. She kept her head bowed low, her tiny hands white-knuckled as she gripped her hem, her small frame completely paralyzed with fear. Liu Ming quietly reclined against the expensive velvet sofa, idly fingering a string of prayer beads. Yet her eyes were like serrated blades cutting into Xiaoyi, filled with raw, undisguised loathing. What are you standing there for? Clean up the filthy mess you made right now. Absolutely no manners at all. Xiaoyi, I called out. My voice wasn't loud yet. It caused the very air in the room to turn heavy. My daughter's head snapped up, her large eyes instantly brimming with tears, as she bolted toward me and clung to my legs for dear life. She could feel the venomous malice radiating from that woman. I scooped her up into my arms. The tea was still slightly warm, dampening the sleeve of my shirt. I didn't even acknowledge Liu Mingqi, only whispering to Xiaoyi, "Did you get burned, sweetheart?" "Oh, so the master of the house is back." Liu Mingqi set down her beads, her voice drawling out with a long, mocking cadence. "Back to play hero for your little money waster. Am I wrong? What's the point of raising a girl? A complete waste of food and space. If only Ruyan had given us a grandson instead." "Mom," I cut her off. My voice was flat and cold. "Xiaoyi is my daughter. She is not a burden. Since we clearly aren't welcome here, we're leaving you wish?" Liu Mingqi sat bolt upright, the wrinkles on her face twisted with pure spite. "Zhang Jiheng's health is fragile, and he requires constant care. I've already hired a private nurse from abroad, and if you aren't paying for it, who is? If you don't cough up this cash, then who will? You lot. You father-daughter parasites have lived off the Liu family for years, and now that Ruyan is gone, you think you can just shirk your duties. Let me tell you right now, not a chance." Zhang Jiheng let out a perfectly timed, frail-sounding cough as he slowly emerged from the adjacent side hall. Liu Ruyan immediately hovered by his side like a shadow, holding a glass of warm water in her hand. After carefully serving him a sip, she finally glanced toward me, her tone dripping with feigned disapproval. "Brother-in-law, Mom is just grieving and overwhelmed, so her words might be a little sharp. Xiaoyi is just a child after all. Spilling things wasn't intentional. However, Jiheng's recovery is indeed our absolute priority. You are still the son-in-law of the Liu family after all. With Ruyan gone, It's only right that you shoulder more of the household burdens. I stared at the three of them. What a perfect touching scene of family devotion. I won't run from the responsibilities that are actually mine, I said slowly and deliberately, my gaze sweeping coldly over Liu Ruyan. But Xiao Yi is my absolute bottom line. If anyone dares to breathe another insult at her, don't blame me, Li Zifeng, for burning every bridge we have. Without another word, I ignored their stunned faces, carrying Xiao Yi straight upstairs. As I passed the landing, the door to the small terrace was slightly ajar, and the sound of hushed, secretive whispering drifted out again. Relax, Mom is just loud and barky on the surface. Deep down, she still dotes on me the most. Right now, she only acknowledges me as her daughter. It was Liu Ruyan's voice, carrying a faint, unmistakable trace of smugness. I've wronged you, making you suffer. Having to live under someone else's name like this. Zhang Jiheng's voice was sickeningly tender. Anything for you. It's just that Li Zifeng and that kid are a real nuisance. Don't rush it, we'll play the long game. He wants to shoulder the burden, Mom will find a way. My grip around Xiao Yi tightened almost imperceptibly. Sensing my sudden change in mood, her tiny hand gently patted my back in comfort. Back in the guest room where we were staying, I shut the door and sat Xiao Yi on the edge of the bed. I knelt down to meticulously check her socks and ankles, confirming that the hot tea hadn't actually scalded her skin. She looked into my eyes, whispering, Daddy, why does Grandma hate me so much? Is it because I'm not a boy? The child's innocent question was like a sharp needle piercing my heart. I ruffled her hair gently. It's not your fault at all. Xiao Yi, it's just that some people have rotten hearts. Early the next morning, the official transfer orders and the project initiation notice arrived. I didn't hesitate for a second and began packing my final things. I had to escape this toxic quagmire as quickly as possible. Carrying our simple luggage and holding Xiao Yi's hand, I reached the foyer. When footsteps echoed behind me, Liu Ruyan stood halfway up the stairs, staring down at the suitcase in my hand with a cold, haughty gaze. Her face darkened. Where exactly do you think you're taking Xiao Yi? I folded the Sucheng project initiation letter and calmly tucked it into the inner pocket of my blazer. Pulling Xiao Yi slightly behind me, I replied, Where I go. It's hardly something I need to report to you, Miss Liu. I looked at that face so familiar, yet now so alien. My tone completely flat. Liu Ruyan's expression visibly stiffened for a fleeting moment before her brow furrowed. Brother-in-law, don't say things out of spite. Taking a child so far away by yourself to a place where you have no one. What if something happens, you won't have a soul to help you? Stay here at the ancestral home. At least then, Mom and I, along with Zhang Jiheng, can look after you both. That won't be necessary. I cut her off, tightening my grip on Xiao Yi's hand to move past. From this moment forward, our family affairs are no longer the Liu family's concern. She suddenly lunged forward, her target clear as she grabbed the briefcase, hanging from the crook of my arm. She yanked the strap with sudden violence, catching me off guard as she snatched the bag away. With lightning speed, she unzipped it, her fingers frantically rummaging through the contents until she finally pulled out that specific document, the one bearing the corporate letterhead and official seal, the project initiation form. She scanned it briefly, her face instantly turning grim and dark. Without a shred of hesitation, she gripped both sides of the paper, and with a sharp rip, she tore the document cleanly down the middle. I'm doing this for your own good, Zifeng. She tossed the shredded remains of the document onto the floor, the paper scraps fluttering down, as she offered a condescending holier-than-thou lecture. You haven't held a real job in years. Staying in the ancestral home is for the best for everyone. I stared at the scattered debris on the ground. That was my escape route. The pivotal first move in my entire endgame. Rage hammered against the walls of my chest, but I simply raised my head and met her gaze with icy defiance. For my own good, Liu Ruyan, no, I suppose I should call you Liu Shu now. By what right do you claim to know what's best for me? Her eyes instantly darkened with a sinister glint, and she stepped closer, dropping her voice to a low hiss. That mask of feigned tenderness vanished. Li Zifeng, don't you dare bite the hand that feeds you. Don't forget who's been providing for you and that girl all these years. Every grain of rice and drop of water from the Liu family did not come to you for free. Now that Ruyan is barely cold in the ground, you think you can just sever all ties and vanish with the Liu family bloodline. Life isn't that simple, you ungrateful wretch. I nearly burst out into a fit of hysterical laughter, providing for us. When Xiao Yi was critically ill and dying, I knelt outside the Liu gates begging for a shred of mercy. Who was it that ordered the guards to kick me away like a stray dog? Now that I'm leaving, suddenly they can't let their charity walk away. I let out a mocking sneer, my gaze cutting through her like a blade. Wasn't it you who was just dying to seize her corporate power? Liu Ruyan's face flickered with a hint of panic. She forced herself to remain composed, her tone softening into a manipulative probe. Zifeng, is there some kind of misunderstanding between us? We're supposed to be a family. With my sister gone, it's my duty to step up and care for you and Xiao Yi. Misunderstanding, I cut her off, my voice hardening into jagged stone. The only misunderstanding here is that I once mistook you monsters for actual human beings. Before the words could even settle, I raised my hand, channeling every ounce of my repressed fury, and delivered a thunderous, violent slap across her face. The sharp crack of the impact echoed through the hollow foyer. Liu Ruyan's head snapped to the side from the impact, staggering back until she collided with the heavy door, a crimson handprint rapidly blooming across her cheek. She whipped her head back toward me, the sheer shock in her eyes instantly replaced by a twisted venomous malice. Li Zifeng Yu actually dared to strike me. She shrieked like a banshee, completely abandoning her facade of elegance as she lunged, clawing desperately at my wrists. Her long nails dug deep, nearly embedding into my flesh, as she tried with all her might to drag me back inside. You aren't taking a single step out of this house. Security, get in here now. Terrified by the chaos, Xiao Yi burst into tears. I shielded my daughter with one arm while struggling to break free. Her strength was unnervingly intense, fueled by the desperate, frantic energy of a cornered beast. Just as we were locked in this messy, violent struggle, the massive front entrance, usually bolted shut and accessible only via the high-security intercom, was suddenly pushed wide open from the outside. The blinding afternoon sun flooded the foyer, casting long, sharp shadows of the figure standing there. The man at the front stood tall and commanding, exuding the heavy, composed aura of a high-ranking executive. His gaze swept across the entryway, taking in the pathetic farce, finally landing on the disheveled Liu Ruyan, whose face was swollen and hair matted. As she desperately clung to my clothes, Liu Ruyan froze as if turned to stone, her screams and movements dying in an instant. The feral rage on her face stiffened before slowly draining into a deathly pallor. President Li, the vehicle is ready for your departure. The lead figure stepped into the light, revealing the sharp, meticulous silhouette of a tailored suit. It was the group CEO's chief special assistant, Chen Shu. Behind him stood two professional security guards, clad in the company's elite black uniforms. With a face devoid of any unnecessary emotion, he gave me a subtle, respectful nod of acknowledgement. Then he stepped aside, his voice steady and crystal clear. President Li, the private jet to Sucheng has been coordinated. The car is waiting just outside. Legal and the core members of the project team will rendezvous with you at the airport. The briefing can be conducted during the flight. That title, President Li, was like a jagged needle, piercing straight through Liu Ruyan's frayed nerves. The iron grip she held on my wrist suddenly vanished, as she turned a look of pure disbelief toward Chen Shu, her voice cracking into a high-pitched, frantic screech. Chen Shu, what the hell did you just call him? President Li, have you gone completely blind? I am the rightful president of the Liu Corporation. Who does this pathetic Li Zifeng think he is? Since when does he deserve that kind of respect? Chen Shu finally shifted his gaze toward her, his posture respectful yet utterly detached, treating her like a complete stranger whose identity had yet to be verified. With a slight bow, he spoke in a cold professional monotone. Greetings, Ms. Liu Shu. Following the unfortunate passing of Ms. Liu Ruyan, and by a unanimous vote from the board of directors, Mr. Li Zifeng has been officially appointed as the Liu Group's new CEO and acting chairman of the board, effective immediately. He paused for a beat, his eyes sweeping over Liu Ruyan's deathly pale face, before continuing in that same flat robotic cadence. Therefore, for myself and every group employee, addressing Mr. Li Zifeng as President Li is in strict accordance with company bylaws and protocol. As for the identity you claim, Chen Shu's eyes lingered on Liu Ruyan for a calculated second, his gaze as cold as someone scrutinizing a fraudulent clause in a contract. My professional duty is to serve the current top executive of the Liu Group. According to the official personnel records and the death notification I received, Ms. Liu Ruyan has tragically passed away. You are her older sister, Ms. Liu Shu. In the current corporate hierarchy and the official list of shareholders, there is zero record of a Liu Shu holding any position. So, with all due respect, I have received no instructions to report to you, nor to confirm any executive changes at your request. Bullshit. Liu Ruyan snapped completely. She jabbed a finger toward her own nose, shaking uncontrollably from a volatile mix of extreme fury and sheer panic. I am Liu Ruyan. I'm the real Liu Ruyan. Liu Shu is the one who's dead. It was Liu Shu who perished in that wreck. All of you have been played by this man. He forged the documents. He's illegally usurping my power. Chen Shu, get the hell out of here right now. You're fired. Chen Shu didn't even twitch an eyebrow. He simply took a calculated half step back. Ms. Liu Shu, I must ask you to remain calm. Chen Shu's voice remained flat and monotone, yet it carried a weight of unquestionable authority. Regarding the identity confirmation of Ms. Liu Ruyan, it was verified by legal documents from authoritative agencies and processed by her immediate family, specifically President Li, who personally confirmed the death and finalized all procedures. This carries full and absolute legal weight. As for your current claims, if they involve disrespect toward the deceased or slander against the authority of the group's current leader, our legal department reserves the right to pursue full legal action against you. He stopped looking at the trembling Liu Ruyan, who looked like she was on the verge of collapsing, and turned back to me with a slight bow. President Li's, it's time to move. Our window is closing. The preliminary team in Sucheng is already in position, simply waiting for you to take command. And for Young, Miss Xiaoyi, her travel nurse, and child psychologist are already waiting in the vehicle. I gave a curt nod in response. I leaned down to scoop up the still sobbing Xiaoyi, wrapping her securely in my coat, and gently patting her back to soothe her. From the beginning to the very end, I didn't grant Liu Ruyan a single glance. Li Zifeng, you can't leave. Give me back what's mine. That's my company. Everything belongs to me. I am Liu Ruyan. I am the president of the Liu Group. Liu Ruyan's hysterical, frantic screams echoed behind me. She tried to lunge forward one last time, but was politely yet firmly restrained inside the doorway by the two highly trained security guards. Chenshu held the door wide, opening the path to the outside world. Brilliant sunlight cascaded inside, illuminating the sleek black sedan idling at the entrance, contrasting sharply with the rotting, suffocating gloom of the mansion. It was as if two completely different dimensions had collided. Clutching Xiaoyi tight, I stepped over the threshold of the Liu estate. 3 days later, aboard the private jet bound for Sucheng, I was meticulously reviewing the project's geological reports. Xiaoyi was fast asleep in the adjacent child safety seat. Chenshu approached with a tablet in hand, his expression more grim than I had ever seen it. He strode over quickly and pivoted the screen toward me. President Li, we have a crisis. Across domestic social platforms and several financial forums, barely 30 minutes ago, a massive wave of negative propaganda began targeting you. On the display was a topic that had already clawed its way into the top 3 trends. The new CEO of Liu Group, wife killer and asset thief. The moderator of the thread was a newly registered, yet already officially verified account. The bio read, close friend and authorized spokesperson for the late Liu Ruyan. This account had published a long-form expose, accompanied by a viral video clip. In the footage, Liu Ruyan, or rather the woman masquerading as Liu Shu, appeared without makeup in a simple black sweater, her eyes red and swollen, looking utterly pale and devastated. Before she even spoke, the tears began to fall. She faced the camera, her voice choked and broken, each sentence dripping with monumental grief. It's simply unbelievable. I am Liu Shu, the twin sister of Liu Ruyan. As she spoke, tears rolled down her cheeks. My sister, her death wasn't what it seemed. I've been too terrified to speak up. I was so scared. But I can no longer remain silent. She lifted her tear-filled eyes, her gaze into the lens brimming with terror and accusation. Li Zifeng, my former brother-in-law. He is a literal monster. He meticulously orchestrated everything. My sister Ruyan, her death wasn't just some freak car accident. It was Li Zifeng. He's the one who murdered my sister. He was just an ordinary man from a humble background. He spent years as a live-in son-in-law in our family, pretending to be submissive and obedient to Ruyan. While secretly lusting after the Liu family fortune, he abused her trust to covertly siphon away assets and forge legal documents. Ruyan had already started noticing red flags before the accident and was just about to confront him. Then the crash happened when I questioned him. He threatened me, saying if I dared to utter a word, something terrible would happen to Xiaoyi too. I was utterly helpless. I had to watch in agony while my sister's body wasn't even cold yet and he was already brandishing some suspicious will he'd pulled. Out of thin air, he robbed my sister of everything that was rightfully hers. He stole the Liu Corporation. He didn't even have the decency to wait a few days. As soon as the funeral ended, he was desperate to kick me, my mother, and the people Ruyan truly loved out of the house. He beat me and called me a lunatic, barring me from even getting close to Xiaoyi. He wants to completely erase every trace of Ruyan from existence. Also, this cold-blooded murderer can seize the Liu legacy with a clean name. By this point in the video, she was drowning in her own tears, on the verge of a total collapse. A man's hands entered the frame, tenderly supporting her and offering a tissue. It was Zhang Juheng. He spoke with heavy sorrow. Shu, that's enough. Your body can't take much more of this. We won't let Ruyan's death go unavenged like this. The video cut to black, automatically redirecting to that long-form article. The post, written from the perspective of Liu Ruyan's sister, detailed exactly how I supposedly oppressed Ruyan, how I meticulously orchestrated the car crash, and how I exploited my young daughter as a bargaining chip. It painted a picture of me barely past Ruyan's 7-day wake, impatiently conspiring with outside capital to usurp total control over the Liu Group. The writing was masterfully inflammatory, depicting me as a calculating, gold-digging parasite who murdered his wife to silence her, an inhuman modern-day heartbreaker and the ultimate gold-digging parasite. The comment section has already reached a total meltdown. The top comments are a solid wall of absolute fury and venom. Holy crap. This is a real-life horror story, even worse than a thriller movie. He's even using his own child as a pawn. This guy is the final boss of gold diggers. Poor Miss Liu, she really had no idea what kind of monster she was marrying. Watching her sister cry like that broke my heart. Why is this scumbag still breathing? Killing his wife for her fortune is a crime against heaven. At police department, at city security. Officers, please investigate this man immediately. No wonder the cremation happened so fast. He was clearly destroying the evidence. The more I think about it, the scarier it gets. Are the directors of the Liu Group complete idiots? How could they let a guy like this become president? Ladies, let's dox this trash. The office address, the phone numbers leak it all. And don't forget the prestigious kindergarten that kid attends. Several infamous clickbait influencers known for exposés have already begun their ruthless deep dive analysis, taking my history as a live-in son-in-law and the timeline of my career at Liu Corp as I gradually infiltrated the core business operations, forcibly twisting those facts to link with Liu Ruyan's sudden death, to push the narrative that this was all cold-blooded premeditation. Even anonymous insiders have started leaking fake intel, claiming I have a paranoid personality and an extreme suffocating need for control. Supposedly, Ruyan complained to friends about wanting a divorce, but was too terrified to go through with it. The cabin fell silent. Only the muffled roar of the engines remained. Chen Shu watched me waiting for his next set of orders. There was a flicker of worry in his eyes, but it was mostly masked by his professional composure. I shut off the tablet. The dark screen reflected my own expressionless face. Outside the window, a thick layer of clouds stretched out, with the sunlight reflecting off the sea of white with blinding intensity. I leaned back into the headrest and slowly closed my eyes. Liu Ruyan, Zhang Juheng? So you couldn't resist playing the public opinion card this early? I'll admit that crying performance was almost believable. Fine then, cry your hearts out while you still can. Because my counterattack begins with a single encrypted file package. Chen Shu's efficiency was as always beyond reproach. An information packet shielded by layers of technical masking to make it completely untraceable back to its source was precision delivered directly into the backends of those core gossip accounts that initially ignited the viral rumors, as well as into the private inboxes of the nation's most influential financial investigative reporters and veteran legal bloggers. The file had no dramatic headline, only a cryptic serial number. Upon opening it, revealed a surgical timeline and an irrefutable chain of cold evidence. The first audio file was pulled from the cloud backup of Liu Ruyan's ill-fated vehicle, recorded in the final moments before the accident. The background noise was a quiet garage, and Liu Ruyan's voice rang out, trembling with suppressed excitement and murderous resolve. Lu Shu must vanish in an accidental death. Only when she is permanently gone can I steal her identity and return to Zhang Juheng's side. That idiot Li Zifeng will serve as the perfect stepping stone and scapegoat. The second piece was a collection of covert photos of Liu Ruyan and Zhang Juheng at a private club, with timestamps proving they were taken 2 years ago, exactly 1 week before my wedding anniversary with Ruyan. The intimacy displayed between the two in the photos viciously crossed the line between a brother-in-law and his sister-in-law. Attached were frequent hotel check-in records from the same period, along with bills for shared luxury expenses overseas. The third document was a copy of Liu Shu's private medical records from the week before the crash, accompanied by a signed physician's statement. The records proved that Liu Shu was nearly 2 months pregnant, but the pregnancy was dangerously unstable. The doctor had strictly ordered immediate bed rest, stating she was in no condition for long-distance travel. Yet the business trip to inspect new projects was a trap orchestrated by Liu Ruyan under the guise of sisterly bonding, forcing the schedule and personally booking the trip for Liu Shu. There was no emotional fluff, no subjective accusations, just stone-cold evidence sorted chronologically. This data was like a drop of water into boiling oil, instantly triggering a public opinion tsunami, 10 times more violent than the previous one. The only difference this time? The eye of the storm had completely flipped its direction. The investigative journalists and legal bloggers who received the files were initially paralyzed by shock, but quickly pivoted to cross-referencing and cautious, high-stakes reporting. The financial circles and elite gossip tabloids erupted in total chaos. Today's plot twist, it wasn't wife killing for assets. It's a cold-blooded sister killer stealing an identity for the family legacy. The absolute soap opera drama of the year. Twin sister murders her sibling to steal her identity and run off with her brother-in-law. New evidence points to Liu Ruyan, Zhang Juheng, and the accident may have been a premeditated hit, forged wills, embezzled assets, and gaslighting her own. Husband and child? Is this woman a literal demon? Where are all the trolls who were attacking President Lee? Show yourselves and apologize. He wasn't some gold-digging parasite. He was being hunted by a venomous snake who wanted to pick his bones clean. The internet's fury did a 180-degree turn. The venom previously aimed at the wife-killing parasite fully transformed into a crusade against the sister-killing, identity-thieving viper, and her adulterous accomplice with even more violent condemnation. Liu Ruyan and Zhang Juheng's social media accounts were instantly besieged, drowned in a tidal wave of curses and demands for the truth. The friends and influencers who initially shilled for them either scrubbed their posts in silence or were exposed by netizens for taking hush money to spread lies, leaving them utterly humiliated. But most crucially, this mountain of incriminating information was delivered directly to Liu Mingqi's doorstep. Chen Shu had arranged for a professionally bound dossier, complete with high-resolution copies of the smoking gun evidence, to be hand-delivered to the Liu ancestral mansion, straight into Liu Mingqi's hands. Rumor has it that Liu Ruyan and Zhang Juheng were there, desperately trying to pacify the matriarch, while plotting how to manipulate the rising public backlash against them. Instead, Liu Mingqi locked herself inside the study for nearly a full hour. Then, an earth-shattering sound of glass shattering erupted from within, followed by a warped, hysterical shriek of agony and rage. "You animal Liu Ruyan, you absolute monster. How could you ever be so heartless? That was your own sister. Your flesh and blood. Shu, my poor sweet Shu, you died such a tragic, wrongful death. It's because I was blind. It was my own ignorance that killed you. And you, Zhang Jiheng, you heartless, ungrateful piece of filth. What did the Liu family ever do to wrong you? How could you conspire with this wicked woman to murder my precious Shu? You will both rot in hell. Get out. Both of you get the hell out of my house. Exile yourselves from the Liu family. I never want to lay eyes on your faces again. I'm calling the police. I'll make sure you pay for my daughter's life with your own." What followed was a storm of violent shouting, the sound of a physical struggle and more objects being pulverized. Ultimately, Liu Ruyan and Zhang Juheng fled in absolute panic, dodging the porcelain vases Liu Mingqi hurled at them. Amidst a hail of jagged shards and venomous curses, humiliated and broken as they escaped the Liu ancestral estate. In Ducheng, at the temporary headquarters of the Liu Group's new energy base, beyond the massive floor-to-ceiling windows, the silhouette of a modern industrial park was taking shape, standing in sharp contrast to the lush green mountains in the distance. I was in the middle of a session with the core project team, finalizing the terminal integration blueprints, when the internal line buzzed. The secretary's voice sounded hesitant. "President Li, there's a woman at the front desk insisting on seeing you. She claims she is Liu Ruyan. She has no appointment, and her emotional state seems extremely volatile. Security has already intercepted her, but she refuses to leave." The conference room fell into an instant heavy silence. The executives exchanged meaningful glances, and quietly began gathering their documents. I raised a hand to signal them. "Recess for 10 minutes. Take her to the small reception room on the west side of the first floor. I'll be down shortly." That particular room was tucked away in a remote corner, rarely used for official business. When I pushed the door open and entered, Liu Ruyan was standing by the window with her back to the door. She was draped in a pink trench coat that looked expensive, yet was noticeably wrinkled and disheveled. Her hair lacked its usual meticulously styled perfection, falling loosely in stray messy strands against her neck. At the sound of the door, she spun around. In just a few days, she had become gaunt and frail. The dark shadows beneath her eyes were far beyond the power of makeup to conceal. Those eyes, once overflowing with arrogance and pride, were now bloodshot and fractured, filled with the frantic panic of a hunted animal. Seeing me, her lips trembled with a sudden surge of emotion, and before she could speak, the dam finally broke. Heavy tears rolled down her cheeks without warning, smearing her eyeliner into a dark, messy blur. "Zifink," she choked out, her voice incredibly hoarse and ragged, drenched in a thick, agonizing sob. She staggered toward me, taking a few shaky steps, desperately wanting to close the distance. Yet she froze under my icy, indifferent stare. "Zifeng, I was wrong. I finally see how wrong I was." She buried her face in her hands, her shoulders heaving with violent, uncontrollable tremors. As she gasped for air through her hysterical weeping, it was a total pathetic breakdown. A raw display of suffering, devoid of any remaining dignity. Zhang Jiheng, that bastard Zhang Jiheng isn't even human. The second he saw our secrets were exposed, he pinned every single bit of the blame on me. He vanished with every last cent I could touch. He had it all planned. He already had an escape route. He set up everything abroad under a fake identity. He never intended to have a future with me. He was just using me the entire time. Using me to bleed the Liu family resources dry. Using me to get rid of Liu Shu. I was played by him. I was his puppet and he ruined me. Her voice was drowned in a sea of tears as she began to weave a fragmented tale of Zhang Jiheng's cold-blooded betrayal and his meticulous predatory calculations. How he had seduced her with honeyed lies, and how decisively he had discarded her when the scandal broke. She wept for her own blind obsession, cried out her guilt toward her sister Liu Shu, and wailed most of all for how she'd wronged me. "Zifeng, I regret it all. I'm so deeply, truly sorry." She lifted her tear-blurred eyes, straining to read my expression through the haze of her misery. Her face, a mess of salt snot and ruined cosmetics, was the very definition of a pathetic wreck. But deep within those eyes erupted the desperate manic glint of a person clutching at a final straw. "The one I've truly loved all along is you. Only you. What happened with Zhang Jiheng was just a moment of insanity. A foolish, childish obsession I couldn't let go of. I finally realize it now, that you were the only one who ever truly cared for me. You're Xiaoyi's real father, and you are my true husband." She tried to crawl closer, reaching out with trembling skeletal fingertips. "Can we just start over, please? I don't want anything else anymore. Not the Liu Corporation. Not this stolen identity. I only want you and our daughter. The three of us can just leave this place, go somewhere where nobody knows who we are, and live a simple, happy life. Please, I promise I'll be devoted to you from now on. And I'll be the best mother to Xiao Yi. I'll be a perfect wife, a perfect mom. Just give me one more chance. Zifeng, I'm begging you." Her wails echoed through the hollow, empty reception room. saturated with the stench of hopeless desperation. I remained an anchored statue of silence throughout her plea, my face a complete void of emotion. There was no flickering rage, no softening of sympathy, only a bottomless, chilling tranquility. Not until she had cried herself hoarse, her body practically collapsing into a heap on the floor, did I finally make a move. I didn't acknowledge her outstretched hand, nor did I answer her pathetic begging. I simply turned my back on her and walked across the reception room toward the side door that led to the private internal corridor. I swung the door open. Standing there was my personal assistant, holding the hand of Xiaoyi, who had just finished her afternoon enrichment classes. Xiaoyi's eyes lit up the moment she saw me. She reached out her tiny arms. Daddy. I leaned down and scooped her up into a firm, protective embrace. Xiaoyi naturally wrapped her arms around my neck, curiously peeking over my shoulder into the room at the strange woman whose makeup was a ruined mess from all the hysterical sobbing. A look of pure confusion crossed her little face. But she wasn't afraid. She simply snuggled closer into my protective embrace. I turned around holding her tightly, to face Liu Ruyan, who had suddenly choked back her sobs, and was staring at us with wide, hollow eyes. I used Xiaoyi's small, soft body as a shield to sever the final, lingering connection between her and me. Liu Ruyan, I began, my voice as cold and flat as a frozen lake. In the eyes of the law, my wife Liu Ruyan is already dead. There is no bringing her back. Do not ever dare to disturb our lives again. You know exactly what I'm capable of. The elevator reached the top floor, and the door slid open to a sun-drenched corridor where my team of assistants was waiting for me. I walked out into the light carrying her, my voice dissolving into the brilliance as I left her behind. Once some things are lost, they are gone for a lifetime.